Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the podcast Strikes Back. My name is George and you're listening to our review of the 2019 Lion King film with the boy Connor.
Hello.
Benny is no longer here ever again. He's run away. He knew we were going to review the Lion King and he was like, I'm fucking out.
He left the country in order to avoid this.
That's how you do it, man. Like if you don't want to watch a movie and review it, you just leave the country.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us, guys. This is the non-spoiler part of our Lion King review, the live-action remake of 1994's animated film that is a real favorite. And I just looked up the box office before. This film absolutely crushed it in 1994. $45 million budget, $968 million box office haul, almost $1 billion. Like that's unheard of in the 90s. So that really shows how much of a cultural impact this film had. We grew up on it, and I've seen the stage production. So here we are, live action, the 15th one or whatever it is of this new batch. Connor, give us a little bit of context of your relationship with the original Lion King and how are you feeling about the trailers for this one? Toughie.
All right.
Toughie.
The original is one of the, I'd say, kind of key movies of my childhood. In terms of, I loved all those kind of classic Disney films, as any well-brought-up child should. But
Go the McGregors.
It's just facts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Lion King held a special place in my heart, like it did a lot of other kids. And I've revisited that movie a couple times in the last, decade or so. And as an adult watching that film, I found that it is as impactful, if not more impactful. Being older, I got to see it when it got re-released in theaters.
Oh, nice. The 3D one?
I can't remember if it was 3D. I think it was for the 3D release.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just remember like watching that film and thinking like appreciating different things. Like for example, the score. That Hans Zimmerman.
Yeah.
What a guy.
And the songs themselves.
The songs, the emotionality that film has. Look, I hold that movie on quite the pedestal. Coming into this, to be honest, I think that Jon Favreau never really stood a chance. And the reason that I say that is because of the entire concept of this film. They were taking an animated film, a film that had animated animals. Hand animated animals. Well, just even just animated, like as a kind of
cool. As a medium.
And they push that to what is effectively live action, and that on a concept level for me was a huge mistake because when you have human voices on real animals, it looks weird. And you lose a lot of the emotionality that the medium of animation allows you to, I guess, express. As a caveat, from here on in, and for the entirety of this review, I'm going to talk about animation, excluding the digital animation that they did in this film. When I'm talking about animation, I'm talking about like something that looks animated, not like
cartoons,
yeah. Why was it South African?
I don't know.
So yeah, I on a concept level, I didn't really like this. It's got a stacked cast, but which I guess was interesting to me, but not a real. Didn't really kind of alleviate any of the concerns that I had, and then. And then I saw some of the trailers, and it was exactly what I thought. It looked like a live-action version of a movie that I had already seen, and my overall sentiment towards that was if I wanted to see The Lion King again, I just watched the original. I don't need to see this in live action. That doesn't add anything for me.
Yep.
So that's where I was sitting at.
Yeah, for me, this is the original is one of those films that I feel like I don't know a time where I hadn't seen and known that film. Like it's so in my DNA, I feel
Yeah.
like it's kind of like got a lot of life lessons in there, and it's a really, really profound film, and it's one that I've revisited many times over the years, and it really every time I watch it, it hits me in the feels, man. Like every
it's
time,
so impactful, right?
like those songs. There's two particular parts in the film that really, really always stir the emotions inside me. So when I heard, I quite enjoyed the Jungle Book, John Favreau's Jungle Book, and he talked about the waterhole scenes being influenced by the Lion King, and watching that film, I was like, hey, that'd be cool to see, what he could do there. But then upon getting the trailers and whatnot, it just seemed very anemic and muted, and didn't really have like just kind of like sawn off. It didn't feel like it had the heart, and I think it comes down to what you're saying. The expressiveness in the characters wasn't there, and technically brilliant but emotive. It just was missing that finer detail.
Yeah.
So I was a bit concerned going in, but I've kind of I've just got like, it is what it is. The original's there. We'll just go in. So we saw it earlier tonight. And this is the non-spoiler part of the review. Spoilers a bit later on. I think that the technical side of things.
I knew we were going to start with this.
Me too.
I could tell you how this entire review is going to go.
Yeah, me too.
Because I rehearsed this review yesterday before I had seen the film.
That's a bad thing. I
Honestly.
didn't, and I've got a lot of things to bring in that I was interested by. But
Yeah.
I mean, this is pretty fucking phenomenal from a technical side of things.
Oh, from a technical point of view, this is spectacular.
I heard these two old ladies walking out of the cinema, and they were talking to each other, and like, how do they do that? How do they make it look so good? And the other lady goes, "It's the software. The software has gotten so good." And I was like, "You're not wrong."
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah,
you're not
that's
fucking
true.
wrong.
But I mean, let's not discount the fact that the animators on this, fuck, I've already broken my own rule. The technicians, whatever you want to call them, on this, I mean, kudos to them, because this, honestly, it does look really good. And I just mentioned how animals talking looks weird, and fair play to them. It didn't look nearly as weird as I thought it was going to. In fact, it looked pretty good.
There were some parts where it did look weird.
Yeah.
Especially in some of the singing parts. But overall,
yeah, watching animals sing like that is a bit weird.
Yeah. But they managed to actually have a little more emotion than I was anticipating. They brought in some snarly bits when they got angry. Like,
Yeah.
I thought they did a solid job. It's definitely not on the same level as the original. But it's better than I was anticipating.
If you're comparing it to the original, then it feels really, really muted with the expressions, and we can get into that a little bit later. But like I said, from a technical standpoint, from a visual standpoint, I think this was really well done.
Yeah. Now,
do you have any other compliments?
You know what? I've been seeing so many reviews about this, just ripping it to shreds. And I got to tell you, man, like, I still think that, yes, like, this is the same film. Like, let's put it this way. This story relies on the excellence of the first one, and it leverages that to the point where I was actually emotionally stirred in parts. I was invested in the story. And
look,
it rides the coattails of that original.
There's the stampede scene that I felt myself getting a little bit emotional at, and that I think mostly was, well, all right, when it started, but I think that was mostly because I was just remembering how I feel when that scene happens.
Yeah.
Like,
no, Mufasa, that whole scene was intense. Like, I was feeling it.
It was. I don't want to get into spoilers, so maybe we'll save that for a bit later, but on a general note, I found that this film didn't carry the same weight because it didn't have the same level of emotionality that you could associate with those characters. And that, I think, is just, that's why I don't think that Jon Favreau could have done anything to avoid this. Once they said, yeah, live action Lion King, I don't know how you get past that, because it's just all the characters
It's
seem
kind of Dan if you
muted.
do, Dan if you don't. If you do
Yeah.
change it and you don't make it exactly the same remake, oh, you fucked up the Lion King. And then if you make it exactly the same, you get what we got here.
Just why bother?
Why bother? So it's money in the bank essentially, and Disney have gone the very conservative approach here, and probably, if you look at it, the right approach when it comes to business.
For business, yeah,
For
they will make a
business.
lot of money out of this film.
Maybe not creativity, but for business, they made the right decision here.
But this is kind of this is the real kind of sucker punch of this kind of film, though, is because it will make lots of money, but it feels heartless.
I don't think it does feel heartless, and
At all, really.
I
I mean, this is coming from someone that is comparing it to the heart that I got out of watching the original.
as I said, I got emotionally invested in this, and I felt something. Not as much as the original, and not all the time. But
you
I
can't
was
just save this by saying I felt a flutter and then being like,
no,
okay,
I
it's
didn't
all
feel a flutter. I was emotionally stirred in the parts that I think I should have been emotionally stirred in, and I was quite intrigued that I was surprised at how much I felt it in this.
Yeah, I don't want to. There's a specific example where I'll talk about
In spoilers.
that kind of contradicts that a little bit. But
another interesting thing about this is that I felt like if you could compare it to the original, what I really liked about this one was I think it focused a little bit more on the characters of Simba and Scar. And the original, like in a lot of ways, like those themes and everything's there, but it's more about this beautiful overall story.
so you think there's more?
I think there's a little bit more in terms of like not a ton, but I felt like it was more Simba's story in this one, and in the original, it's more about the whole presentation. And then also, I think they had a few more layers with Scar and maybe a little more dialogue. And I just felt like this sort of Shakespearean, tragedy and this sort of like this menacing character. Like he just felt like I really liked what they did with him in here, and I enjoyed that.
I've felt like there was little to no difference in terms of, because there aren't really that many added scenes in this. This is almost like to a T, beat for beat from the original film.
Totally.
So I don't know where you're thinking that they added extra layers.
I think it's just in a few lines of dialogue, with Sarabi and him.
See, I found that without the expressiveness, that a lot of that was lost. I felt it was way less. I thought it was way more muted and just.
It's definitely Alyssa. I'm compared to the original. It's muted, but
Yeah.
what I liked at least for me, I liked that. Just seeing, like, I think it was maybe even the fact that it was live action as opposed to cartoon. I think even that presentation itself just brought it into like, okay, Simba is the main character of this. And of course he's the main character in the first one. Yes, all right, he's the main character. Of course he's the main character. But I just felt like it was more his story in this rather than the overall beautiful, this is Africa and this is the wilderness and this is Pride Rock. That's what the original feels like. It feels like the ensemble of characters.
When was the last time you watched The Lion King?
Probably 2 years ago, a year ago.
Okay.
Not too long ago.
Because I don't
agree with that?
No.
Cool.
Which is fine.
Yeah. Love Timon and Pumbaa in this. I thought Seth Rogen was great casting. And they had a lot more to do, a lot more dialogue, and expanded upon a few little fun little scenes.
Did they have much more dialogue?
I think they had a lot more. They had a way more banter between them, I felt.
I don't think so, actually. I think that was pretty much, again, on par. Like they
had the Seth Rogen-y.
When I say beat for beat, they were pretty much line for line.
88 minutes for the original and 118. So there's 20 minutes. It's 20 minutes longer.
20 minutes, really?
20 minutes longer.
That's bizarre. I don't even know where that
40
minutes came from. Yeah.
40 minutes.
That can't be right. That's got to be extra, like, credit.
There was a lot more. And Seth Rogen and the other dude had a way more of that, like, Judd Apatow-y, I'm just kind of bantering and talking with you.
But a lot of those lines are directly from the original.
Oh, there were a lot, of course. the script, it's just added in lines in between.
Yeah, maybe.
I definitely
weird.
felt so, and I liked how they expanded. That's probably a spoiler, so let's not get into that. So this is a weird one for me because
it sounds like you're defending Lion King.
yeah, we're going there.
We're going down that road. That is bizarre. Look, I just.
Well, what would you like to talk about, like in terms of the negatives or the areas that you thought weren't really working for you?
So I don't know whether this is a nostalgia thing. I felt like most of the voices felt off or odd. Actually, I'm almost positive that's because of the nostalgia thing. I'm comparing it to what I remember those voices and those characters are meant to be, and particularly for a story that is beat for beat, that feels odd, right? Like the closer that the story is, and the more that you keep things the same, the more differences stand out. So if you have a character that more or less looks like the original, but sounds different, I don't know, like small differences make a big impact in this. And for having the voice not be Nathan Lane, it just sounds wrong. It's not right. Like it's just like, yeah, you're close, but you're not quite there. I found Seth's singing voice to be there's a fair bit to be desired there.
Yeah, for sure.
In fact, most of the singing in this, I just felt like.
See, what I got in Aladdin, like some of the songs, like they definitely didn't work. They what's the first song? Da, 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 da. Like that original song in Aladdin, like that.
And that didn't work in the live action.
That did not work.
None of the songs in all right,
but none of the songs in this all worked. This all
did you
worked
think that
very
any
well.
of these songs were as good or better than the originals?
They were never as good. Not one time were they as good.
Yeah.
Ever.
Which begs the question, why bother with this movie?
And there was one point where I Just Can't Wait to Be King, that song.
That was bad.
Like that. I didn't think it was bad. And that's actually
it sounded bad.
I don't think it sounded bad, but the colorfulness wasn't there. That's a very colorful, flamboyant scene. That was really lacking. And there's a point where there's all the they still kept the sort of flavor of like the watering hole and all the animals gathering. But the camera's kind of going around the lions and they're singing, but you can't really see they're singing. So it just looks like, to me at least, it was like, we just got CG animals running around and we've got a backing track of the Lion King.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like to me.
Well, that's exactly what it was. If you want to that's
exactly what you saw, sir.
That's just describing what happened.
But you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like the characters were singing. It was like, I'm just seeing a bunch of cuddly animals.
But again, like if you were to listen to that track doesn't sound great. At least it didn't in the theater.
Yeah, I didn't think the sound was the greatest either. But
yeah.
that's a whole other.
Honestly, the music in this felt weirdly off.
Okay.
Just in like producing quality, which is very bizarre.
I didn't think the sound was very like in the cinema we were in. It didn't sound good to me.
Yeah,
like it sounded like boomy and muffled and weird.
Yeah,
didn't have like a clarity.
Yeah, and I don't know whether that was because but to be honest, I've listened to music in that theater before, and it's been fine. So
maybe it was our position in the cinema because we were a bit off center.
Yeah, I suppose, but. That's like that's.
We'll blame it on the proximity in the cinema.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. That's.
No, but it's interesting to hear your opinion there. It just sounded a bit off and
Yeah, it just didn't sound
5-10% off.
To be honest, look. So that's one thing. The musical numbers I felt were all really bland.
There's one in particular that was such a letdown.
Oh, it was Scar's.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a spoiler. That was a spoiler, but that was
just say that it was a letdown.
Massive letdown. And Beyonce's song as well that they just shoved in there at the end. We'll talk about that in spoilers.
Yeah.
Because that was I've got some beef with that.
So here's the other thing that I'll say about this film. There was a lot of this film that felt really rushed. Like
I always feel like that happens when I
Lines.
watch The Lion King, though.
The
I'm like,
line-
well, we're already in the story. Well, we're already in the stampede.
Yeah, but it
Well-
felt oddly rushed in this film. I don't know whether, again, that might be a difference in the medium. Like, you're willing to, because cartoons tend to be
Shorter,
like an hour and a half
Yeah.
usually, and live actions tend to be a little longer, or whatever it is. Maybe you're more forgiving of that. But when I watched this, it just felt like certain things were happening in quick succession. And I'm not meaning like scenes, I mean like lines where people would say stuff like in quick, and you'd be like, oh, right, okay, like cool. Like that seems a bit.
That scene's already done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily get that.
Part of that is, I think some of the lines were taken directly from the original, and I think it feels rushed because, and I hate to take it back to this, but it's relevant, which is that the facial expressions and the animation of the characters is, add something to what they say. So even if you have two lines delivered, let's say, in a similar way, the animation around that is going to make a difference to the context, to like how that's perceived by the audience. And I think that because everything was so muted and everything was so kind of like deadpan in this, that the lines just kind of felt in quick succession because they were so, just bland. Like they
In
were
the
like,
presentation.
this is line 1, this is line 2. And you're like, oh, okay.
Oh, interesting.
That's the impression that I got.
Listen, I totally know what you mean, and there is a level to this where it's just not. It just doesn't have that same gut wrenching. It hits you in the feels. Like the characters are not as lovable. Zazu in particular, I really didn't like Zazu in this. Thought Zazu, like that character, like he looks like. It goes back once again. It goes back to the animation. Like he's just a wide-eyed hornbill, and it just looks weird. It just looks a bit weird, and he does his bow at the beginning and stuff, and
Rafiki,
that didn't work.
I found Rafiki to be
Rafiki. That's probably for spoilers, but Rafiki, what a letdown, bro.
Yeah.
That was terrible. I thought I was like, you've butchered that character.
Yeah.
You've lost everything in that character that made him special.
Yeah.
And now he's just a fucking monkey that mashes up red shit and puts it on a baby lion's head. That's it. That's your function now.
It was weird because they did this movie pretty much beat for beat, but there were certain scenes that I was really excited to see. Like I was like, if we're gonna do a beat for beat, fine. But there's a couple of scenes that I was oddly fascinated with as a kid that they just didn't show.
Such as?
There's stuff that Rafiki did.
Oh yeah.
That was just not there.
Yeah.
There was
yeah, his stuff was great, man.
there was actually a line by Pumbaa that never came about, which I was really disappointed by. But yeah, it's
What about Hans Zimmer's score in this? I thought there were some really interesting new layers added in that sort of updated it for the
I would want
2019 audience.
Yeah. Look.
Like it added a bit more tension, made it a little more Hollywood or modern.
Look, it felt pretty full. Like, I don't know what it is. There were scenes where it sounded like it should be full, but felt a little bit. Again, I don't know what was going on with the sound. Like the sound design on this.
Yeah, the sound in the cinema was weird, man.
Again, are you sure it was the cinema?
No.
Honestly, whoever did the sound on this,
yeah,
I don't know if they did a good job. Maybe it was a cinema. Like, look, it could very well be, but
sound editing or sound mixing? Like
both.
No, which one, bro?
As soon as I know the difference, I'll let you know.
Nobody knows.
No one knows.
Nobody knows. Yeah, this is a really hard one to review, man. I feel like we're going here, there, and everywhere. But ultimately, like, it's the same. And if we get into some kind of wrap up and move into spoilers now,
let's do that.
I think it's appropriate. Ultimately, this is exactly what you were going in for. It is, they've taken the storyboards of the 1994 one and they've slapped on a really nice filter, which is, probably millions, billions, trillions, zillions of dollars worth of computer tech. And it looks stunning. And I was actually surprised that I got as much of I was surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did, but it's nothing on the original. It really just leverages all the beats of the story and the songs, and it does it very well. And it's almost like in a way, I almost feel fooled by this movie because it's done exactly what it was going to do, and it hasn't brought anything new to the table. So I don't think I'll ever watch this again. I'll always go back to the original, but
Yeah.
I don't think it was as bad as I was expecting, and I don't necessarily think it's as bad as everyone says, but that is because of the strength of the original.
Yeah. So for me, I mentioned this before that I had done like a little mini review on my own yesterday, before I had seen it, because I had a sneaking suspicion that I wasn't going to be far off, and it was pretty much dead on. I said that I'll come out of this movie thinking that was a technical masterpiece. I'll say that the voice actors were good, but that it was odd not hearing the originals. I'd say that it'd be beat for beat, but that this movie ultimately, the letdown would be in the fact that there is no expression in that style of animation, or in that, in that medium of live action, and that ultimately would make this film feel muted and soulless. And these are all things that I thought of yesterday before I'd watched the film, and they're all things that came to be true. And that is what is probably most disappointing for me for this film, which is that this movie does absolutely nothing to take any risks or to really do anything inventive or new. And I don't know if there's anything that Jon Favreau or any of the cast could have done.
There was nothing
To really avoid that. I think that is down to the very concept, the very moment that someone in a studio said, we're going to make a live action Lion King, and we're going to, pretty much do the original. I reckon that was doomed from the start.
Don't fuck with the formula.
This is
It'll make $1 billion. They knew that from the beginning.
Yep. And hope, you know what, honestly, I kind of want to say don't see this, because I really don't.
You're adding fuel to the fire.
I don't want this movie to fail, but I kind of do, because I don't want it to be so easy for executives to make this kind of decision. We'll just take an existing property that a lot of people love, we'll slap some new shit onto it, or like new look onto it, and we'll just pump it out, and they just know it's an existing IP, it'll make lots of money. It's so disappointing.
Yeah, there's
right. There should be a reason not to do this kind of film, and I think that.
I think I don't think you can do this way for every Disney live action remake. If they do this, like they do Aladdin exactly the same, it wouldn't have worked as well.
Yeah.
So they got to pick and choose their battles. Mulan looks like it's a different interpretation.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
They know, because that didn't make almost $1 billion when it came out. It's a lesser known one. They probably like, okay, let's freshen this up. But with Lion King, they're like, let's be risk averse here. Let's stick to the tried and true formula.
Yeah.